Hello, Delaware. DETV News' Matt Ford here for a special edition of DETV News. I am joined today, this evening, with Congresswoman Sarah McBride, who's had a busy day this Saturday. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you for being with us, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much. Always good to be here.
Thank you. So you've had a busy day today. Two really impactful protests happening today in Delaware. One I want to start with across the nation, right? So the first one, the hands-off protester rally, all the way from D.C. across the country, and Delaware was not excluded, from Wilmington down to Rehoboth Beach. Can you tell us more about what people were protesting today?
Thousands of Delawareans were out today in Rehoboth, Dover, Newark, Wilmington to make sure that their voices were heard in opposition to this administration's ongoing efforts to rip away life-saving programs, to rip away health care from Delawareans across our state. You know, from day one of this administration, the Trump administration has sought to rip away funding from the state of Delaware, from states across this country that they are entitled to. They've stolen nearly $10 million from Delaware farmers. They just withheld roughly $30 million for efforts to prevent the spread of infectious diseases here in Delaware. They're withholding over $100 million in transportation and infrastructure funding. They're summarily firing thousands of qualified federal workers. And right now, they're trying to gut Medicaid and cut food assistance in order to pay for tax cuts for Donald Trump's billionaire friends. And so Delawareans were out today to say, hands off our Medicaid, hands off our Medicare, hands off our Social Security.
And then you're in D.C. most every day now, Congresswoman, right? Do you feel that message that Delaware took to the streets today will resonate with the administration in D.C.?
Well, look, we know that this administration is hell-bent on cutting taxes for billionaires and paying for it partially by gutting healthcare for 1 in 4 Delawareans. Now, the goal here is to make sure that Republicans in Congress, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, that they see and that they hear this public opposition to their efforts to gut the federal government, cut the federal government in order to grind programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid to a halt, to get people angrier and frustrated. My hope is that my Republican colleagues will hear the outrage with the public here in Delaware and across the country today, and that enough of them will fear losing the next election because they stand with Donald Trump more than they fear losing the next election because they oppose Donald Trump. These public displays of opposition to the administration and Republicans in Congress's budget is critical to stopping it. And if we don't stop it, making it clear that there are going to be consequences in 2026.
So I want to take it to Elon Musk now. All over the news, we're hearing a lot about DOGE and going in and just disseminating some of these, for lack of a better word, disseminating is probably the correct term, right? A lot of these federal jobs. Yeah. What are you hearing from, I'm sure you know many federal workers who have lost their jobs. Can you tell us what you're hearing on the Hill on a day-to-day basis about that?
Well, I've been hearing from Delawareans, I've been hearing from Americans across the country who have been summarily fired, qualified individuals who have been summarily fired from their jobs. Through no fault of their own, because Donald Trump and his donor buddy best friend decided that they want to disingenuously use the idea of waste, fraud, and abuse in order to not only fire people, but grind programs and agencies to a halt, to make them work less well, in order to hurt people, in order to prove that government can't work by making it not work, in order to create so much frustration with these programs that they then have justification to cut them, right? Firing Social Security Administration officials isn't going to make Social Security work better. It's not going to make it more efficient. It's going to make it work worse. And that's going to then give them the justification to try to gut Social Security, privatize Social Security. They're going to try to ruin these programs so that they then have a justification next year and in the years after to cut them even further than what they're proposing right now with their billionaire tax cut budget.
So I want to go and to the Republican side here and say, what do you say to Republicans in Delaware that may say, Congresswoman, all the administration is trying to do is put the power back to the states? What's your response to that?
Well, first off, when we're talking about the Department of Education, for instance, the Department of Education was created to protect and guarantee the rights of students, no matter their race, no matter their zip code, no matter their family income, no matter their disability, to guarantee that every student in this country has access to a safe and quality education. It was created because too many states, now look, I trust Delaware, but we know states across this country don't always have the best interests of their students at heart. We know that states across this country were discriminating against Black students. We're not truly funding support for students with disabilities. We know that states across this country were discriminating against young women. The Department of Education is there to protect the vulnerable. It's there to guarantee that funding is going to students with disabilities, to students living in poverty. And if we see the Department of Education go away, first off, we can't guarantee that all that money is still going to come to the states. But even if it does, that means that some of these governors could use that money to privatize public schools for vouchers. They could divert some of that money to other purposes that don't go toward guaranteeing a good quality public education for children in their state. We need these safeguards in place because we know the alternative is far, far worse. Now, let me just say beyond that, Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies are disingenuously claiming that they are going after waste, fraud, and abuse. All of us want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in government. We need a scalpel solution. Look, Social Security Administration, it has areas of improvement. Wait times are too long. You are not going to cut wait times by closing offices for rural seniors. You're not going to improve wait times by firing the people who process complaints coming in. It's going to slow things down. It's going to make it work worse. People who voted for Donald Trump in this last election, they voted for Donald Trump to lower costs, to make the economy work better for them, to make government work better. In every instance, he's violating those promises. He's making government work worse. He's increasing costs. And just as we've seen over the last couple of days, when he gets his hands on the economy, he ruins it. We are closer to a recession now than we have been in more than a decade, and it is entirely self-inflicted. Donald Trump is creating the conditions where we will likely see a recession.
To that, like all of us, I open my phone in the morning and I scroll on my social media pages and see what friends and colleagues are saying. A lot of them are like, I can't look at my 401k anymore because it's tanking and it's flatlining. Your response to that, what do you tell your constituents who are like, I'm afraid?
Yeah. Look, there is a lot of fear, and I would be incredibly frightened right now if I was on the verge of retirement, had saved my entire life, and I'm just watching over the course of a week, my 401k decimated, my retirement savings decimated, all because of Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress who enable him. This crisis in our stock market, first off, has an immediate effect on people's retirement savings. It was not inevitable. It is all self-inflicted because Donald Trump wants to impose at minimum 10% sales tax on American consumers by putting in place universal tariffs, nearly universal tariffs. He's destroying the economy, and the stock market isn't the end. We could very quickly see businesses stop hiring. We could very quickly see businesses stop investing, all because Donald Trump has some bizarre obsession since he was in his 30s with the idea of tariffs. The last time we did tariffs of this kind of size and approach, we had a Great Depression.
I want to go back. You had talked about the cuts to the Department of Education that have started and are looming underway now. Can you talk about the rally that you were at today at the Chase Center and give our viewers and audience members just a taste of what you heard today?
Before I was in Dover with the Hands Off protest, I was in Wilmington with the Delaware State Education Association, with educators, hundreds of educators from across the state of Delaware, Sussex, Kent, Newcastle County. They all came together in Wilmington today to protest the administration's efforts to dismantle the Department of Education, where we've already seen public servants, dedicated public servants fired, where we already have seen, even in the first administration, during Donald Trump's first 4 years, and now with this new administration under Donald Trump, an effort to privatize public schools, to implement vouchers in this country. I was hearing fear among our educators who worry that they will no longer have the support of the federal government to educate students with disabilities, to support students living in poverty, to make sure that our highest need schools get the resources that they need and that they deserve. But I was there standing with Governor Meyer, Lieutenant Governor Gay, our new Secretary of Education, Cindy Martin, our Attorney General, Kathy Jennings, who has been suing this administration every time they commit an illegal action. I was standing there on behalf of the congressional delegation. Senator Coons and Senator Blunt Rochester were in D.C. voting to protect Medicaid at that moment, to make it clear to educators in Delaware that Team Delaware, our state and federal elected officials, have their backs, and we will not let anyone undermine their ability to do their jobs, whether it's in a classroom teacher, a school nurse, a cafeteria worker, that we won't let anyone in the federal government get away with undermining public education in this country.
I want to ask you, before we wrap up, we're hearing from, especially in Sussex County, viewers and educators are saying that students that have undocumented parents are a lot of times afraid to come to school.
Yeah.
Can you respond to that?
Yeah, it is a frightening time for so many, including immigrant families in this country, undocumented immigrants, but also, as we've seen this administration revoke the legal status of legal residents here, there's fear across immigrant communities regardless of documentation right now. We're hearing from educators about young people who come into the classroom who are worried that they will go home and that their parents won't be there. We're hearing that the parents are worried when they send their kids to school that ICE will go into the public school, despite the fact that that is illegal under federal law. This administration is trying to circumvent that. Schools should be safe havens. Schools should be sanctuaries for all young people who enter their doors, so that those young people can focus on what they're there to do, which is to learn. With this administration, the cruelty is the point. I'm in perpetual conversation with our state government and local governments and local town mayors to make sure that we're working with local law enforcement to prevent the use of state resources to violate the law by going into federal law by going into schools and churches. And I'm really heartened by the commitment of state and local officials to uphold federal law and to make sure that local law enforcement is focused on protecting the community and keeping it safe rather than going after kids or going after innocent parents during the school day.
Thank you. Before we let you go, Congresswoman, we see you on social media, on television, now on national news, standing with constituents along the state of Delaware. We're talking teachers, veterans, yes, healthcare workers, parents. And today was no exception for you. You took out your Saturday and spent your whole day going up and down the state. Can you leave our viewers with a message that you want them to know on Monday when you go back to DC, that you're going to take what they told you today and days prior, and how you're going to push that forward? Every
day that I'm not in Washington for votes, I'm here in Delaware meeting with Delawareans, traveling up and down the state, meeting with parents, meeting with veterans, meeting with law enforcement, meeting with local and county leaders, meeting with nonprofit leaders, meeting with everyday Delawareans who are nervous and are scared. They're scared for their rights. They're scared for funding that they rely on. They're scared in this moment. And what I always try to reinforce is that, one, your federal delegation, Senator Coons, Senator Blunt Rochester, and I, we see you, we hear you, and we are fighting every single day to protect your care, to protect your education, to protect your community, to protect your rights and your safety and your dignity. And look, this is a difficult moment. Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the White House. But what we have seen throughout our country's history is, as Cory Booker said on the Senate floor in that 25-hour speech, that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. That remains true no matter what. Power of the people is greater than the people in power. I love that. Congresswoman McBride, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate having you here on the Saturday, no less. Your fight never doesn't stop, and we appreciate your advocacy for us here in the first state, as always. So we hope you'll come back and see us real soon. Thank you, Matt. Always good to be with you. Thank you so much. Our thanks to Congresswoman Sarah McBride for joining us on this pivotal day in our nation, and also here in Delaware for two
of the rallies that we had talked about here today. So we're going to follow up, of course, with Congresswoman Sarah McBride in the weeks and months to come, and we will bring you the latest as we hear from it. So I will see you next week on DETV News. Signing off. Have a wonderful night.